Hello, and welcome to the Paula Fiscal Show. Today we have a very special guest by the name of Carol Ruth Silver. Some of you might remember her from her days in City Hall. She was re-elected to supervisor 3 times, and today she's going to be a representative for LEAP. Now, what is LEAP? LEAP is Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. And what we want to do today is go over some of the background on the Proposition 64 that's coming up today. So Carol Ruth, I'm just going to go ahead and turn the mic over to you so you can brief us a bit on it.
Okay. Proposition 64. Vote yes. Law Enforcement Against Prohibition is an organization of former cops, former narcs, probation officers, judges, anybody who has been in the criminal justice system, or non-system, I should sometimes say, is eligible to be a member of LEAP, as well as people who are not in law enforcement who are supporters of its positions. Its position is law enforcement, that's us, opposes the prohibition on drugs. And that means not just marijuana. That means heroin. That means all kinds of bad drugs. Now, why do we say there should not be a prohibition in the law against these drugs? Because we like them? No, we don't like them. Because the effect of that prohibition is so much worse than the possible harm being done by those drugs, making us believe, as the people who repealed the prohibition against alcohol for the same reasons, that these prohibitions should be repealed. Now, on the ballot in California in 2016, gosh, I'm going backwards in time, 2016, November, you will have the opportunity to vote to repeal that prohibition on marijuana, one of the least harmful drugs that could possibly be out there. And by so doing, you would be able to reduce the harm that is being done by these drug prohibitions. And what are those harms? I think that Paula is going to play a little clip from a presentation that I made a while ago on exactly those harms.
And my responsibility was to support the sheriff and the jail staff, the deputy sheriffs who walked around with their guns and their badges. I was a jailer. I was a part of the corrections staff, and that therefore made me appropriate to join and to be a speaker for law enforcement against prohibition. This is a pattern that I have observed time and again. Somebody gets busted for drugs. Big drugs, little drugs, doesn't matter. The drug police are out there and they arrest someone, and the district attorney then charges that case. The district attorney charges that case as possession, but in the barter mentality that our criminal justice system has adopted, the district attorney will add another charge, any charge. Possession of a weapon, even though there's no semblance of a weapon. Conspiracy, that's a very useful one in the DA's arsenal, because conspiracy occurs any time that there are more than one person doing anything, and conspiracy is a separate charge, a separate crime, as it were. So they overcharge it, possession and conspiracy, possession and something. Then they come to the defendant. A public defender comes to the defendant and says, I'm your lawyer, and I'm supposed to take care of getting you a fair trial. I'm supposed to defend you against these charges. But you know what? I've got 90 cases, and every one of those cases is essentially the same as your case, and I can only try, at the most, 1 or 2 cases a month. So that's not what he says to the defendant. To the defendant, he says, or she says, you know, if you just plead to one of these charges, we'll get the DA to dispense with the rest of the charges. You'll get credit for time served because you've been in jail now for 3 months waiting for your charges to be done. And you'll walk free, and you'll be on probation. You'll be on probation. What does that matter? What does that matter? Well, what it matters is when you're on probation, you lose all of your civil liberties. You lose the right not to be searched without a warrant. You lose the right not to have to pee in a cup on the order of some cop. You lose the opportunity to go where you want to go or do what you want to do. And you've committed yourself on every probation agreement, every probation plea agreement I've ever seen to, number 1, obey all laws. Well, we all obey all laws, right? Number 2, no drugs, no illicit drugs. Number 3, be subject to search without a warrant at any time. And 4, drug testing. So the person who is defended by a public defender, and I'm not at all challenging public defenders, they're some of my best friends are public defenders. The person takes the plea, and now he has what is called in the trade a hammer. The hammer is that hanging over his head is 3 years in state prison on the charge that he would have been sentenced on after the other charge was dismissed if he violates any of the conditions of probation. So the next thing that happens is he's driving down the road and he gets the blue lights in back of him, and here comes a highway patrol man who pulls him over for speeding and says, I'm going to give you a drug test. I'm going to search your car because you're on probation. And guess what? His urine is dirty. So he's not even in possession of drugs at that point. He might have been in possession of drugs a week before. Marijuana lasts about 30 days in your blood. Don't listen to those who say less. And she is going to jail for 3 years. That's how we get people in jail in America so far in excess of what ought to be that we are 7 times as likely, we have 7 times as many people in jail for drugs in America as they do in most EU countries. The loss of the future of every one of these people is the loss of potential for our society. Loss of college. They can't get any of those kind of grants that kids get to go to school. They can't get employed because they have a drug conviction. But that's not even the worst. In addition to the children of inmates feeling all alone in the world, they are all alone in the world. And this is a form that I made up, bless me for doing it, in order to more quickly give women who were in my jail the opportunity to give away their children, the opportunity to choose somebody in their family, somebody that they barely knew, somebody to have the right to send their child to school or not to send them to school, to take them for medical attention or not to take them for medical attention, to give up the rights of that child to be adopted by somebody else. So what we're doing with our drug laws is we're creating a permanent underclass that goes from these people to the children, to the children. There are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S., and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing result from marijuana use. This marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others. Now, if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you. But unfortunately, you bought the bridge. Your government bought that, and you, therefore, have this. You have the drug laws that constitute the war on drugs. What does the drug policy do in the black community? At the present time, 1/4 of all the young black men in America are either in prison or on parole. 1/4. Most of them were arrested on nonviolent drug charges. In Washington, D.C., the Bush administration's demonstration city, half of all the black men in the city are currently in jail or on parole. More than 90% have arrest records. The same is true of inner-city black men in Baltimore, New York, New Jersey, and Florida. 2/3 of today's black male high school students will be dead, disabled, or in prison before their 30th birthday. The majority will go to prison because of nonviolent drug charges. The majority. The majority. For every black man who goes to college, 3 will go to prison. By the year 2000, half of all black men in America will have gone to prison. Most of them will go to prison for nonviolent drug charges. Most of those who go to prison will be released into society again, but because they are black men with a prison record, they will be permanently unemployable. When Harvey Milk and I used to march in marches down Market Street in San Francisco, yelling to the people who were watching us from windows above, these were marches in favor of gay rights, and the people in the neighborhood were mostly gay men, and we would say, "Come out, come out. If you are in law enforcement, come out for a repeal of prohibition." Every time I've gone to a conference, every time I've had a discussion with a judge, with a prosecutor, with anybody, there's at least a dozen people who say, "Yeah, I'm in favor of that, but I can't speak out because, after all, I have my position to maintain." Well, in this book, and this was written 10 years ago, Judge Gray wrote to all the judges in the United States, and it's full of quotes from judges, federal judges, state judges, who came out, who said, we need to repeal our prohibition laws. And not just marijuana. It's a cop-out to say, well, we did medical marijuana, therefore what are you complaining about? I'm complaining about the system. I'm complaining about the entire system. I never, until I was looking eye to eye to a woman to whom I was giving a form that would cause her to lose her children, I never fully understood and appreciated and became a spokesperson for changing these really, really bad laws.
I've seen that video lots of times, and every time I see it, I remember again the anger that I felt, that I feel about these laws that continue to criminalize the young men, the children, my sons, who themselves, now that the statute of limitations has passed, I can say when they were kids, smoked marijuana. When they were kids, grew marijuana in a closet in their bedroom, and I never looked in that closet because I knew what I was going to find. Because I am, and they are, white, one's Chinese, but we'll pass that. Because we are not black, I was not fearful in their being on the street. I was not fearful that they were going to be arrested for the drug of choice of their peer group. Now they are old enough to have their own teenagers, and I am hopeful that with the passage of Proposition 64 in California, we will no longer have to worry about them. But we will still have to worry about all the black teenagers, because in the race-based decision-making of policemen in our community, in every community in the country, the look for illegal marijuana, illegal drugs of any kind, is more intense, more likely when the perpetrators are black. That's just the way it is. More cops stop more black kids. The statistics are unrelenting. As many black as white kids smoke marijuana. But the kids that go to jail are the black ones. The kids that get arrested are the black ones. And that is why we wind up with jails full of young black men who are, as I said in the video, who are permanently damaged economically as well as from their physical incarceration for the rest of their life.
So, Carol Ruth, let me ask you a question. When you were working for, was it at the time Sheriff Hennessy, the families that were incarcerated, actually they were single women or women with children, how was it that they decided that they would let their kids be taken away?
Well, the system is so outrageously bad that a woman, in the example that I cited, a woman is arrested for some kind of drug possession. She is frantic because she wants to get back to her children who are left home alone. She says to the public defender, whatever it takes, I have to get out. And he says, okay, plead to possession or plead to this or that and go on probation. And probation, as I indicated in the video, is a trap. It is a trap that then says, if you have given up all of your civil liberties, if you have given up your right not to be searched without a warrant, you can maybe pass through this period of your life without ever violating any law, without a speeding ticket, without being accused of shoplifting by a merchant in sometimes an overzealous situation. Can any of you believe that you could go through life being having to not violate any law in the entire universe of the criminal code and still survive? So we get to the point where she violates a law. And then hanging over her head is 3 years or some number of years in the state penitentiary. So when she comes into the San Francisco County Jail and is getting ready to be sent to the women's prison, she is still frantic over who's going to take care of her children. And the choices are very, very bad. She can allow the children to go into foster care, which is a road now in California to being adopted. She can allow them to be sent to their grandparents or somebody else out of state where she'll never get a chance to visit with them. Or she can, what I was offering them, make a power of attorney for somebody else, a cousin, a sister, to be in charge of those children. And I knew, but they didn't know, and I could not in conscience tell them that the failure rate of those kind of powers of attorney was very, very high. The likelihood was that somebody would fail to do what they were supposed to do for those children, and that the kids would wind up in foster care, which means in foster adopt care, which means being adopted out of their custody, and they would never see them again.
Situations like this are very, very tragic. They're happening every day. Let's get back to the law enforcement against prohibition activities. Now, I know that this group started in 2002, and you met up with them very early in those years. Do you think that they are making an impact on our communities by recruiting judges, recruiting former law enforcement officers to join the organization? And how does one participate? Is there an online website that people can log on to and take a look to see if there's
Yes.
a way to participate?
There's a very, very good website. I'm really in awe of the people that put it together and keep it going. And it's got a very simple URL. It's just leap.cc. So if you have a moment, log on to that and take a look, and they have videos and all kinds of things. But the main thing that they're doing right now, or the main thing for California, is supporting Proposition 64. Proposition 64 is called Adult Use of Marijuana Act, AUMA, and I hope that it will pass. I think it will pass, but it's really the minimal kind of repeal of prohibition. It allows a person, me, you, to grow up to 6 plants, and it allows anybody to transport up to 1 ounce of marijuana and up to 8 grams of extract. Now, I'm not a person that uses marijuana. I haven't for all the years that I've been in public office and in the public eye, because the risk was just too great, though I might have wanted to if otherwise. But I am absolutely convinced that if people have the opportunity to acquire marijuana in a reasonable way, as they have been doing through the medical marijuana dispensaries, which are everywhere in California, there will be a reasonable use of marijuana and a cessation of the unreasonable use of police force to I started to say, to try to protect us from marijuana. There's nothing to be protected from. Let those who want to use it grow their own or have their marijuana. It is not going to harm anyone nearly as much as the harm to not only the individuals but to the whole society of the current prohibitions.
So the main message is to vote yes on 64. We want to thank you so much for joining us, Carol Ruth, and we're going to begin a series on criminal justice. This is just the beginning. We're going to have Carol Ruth Silver come in and bring up some of the other topics that are affecting our communities. So once again, thank you so much for joining the Paula Fiscal Show. All of our shows are aired on Channel 27 and Channel 29 on Sundays at 3 o'clock p.m. We also upload to YouTube. And if you'd like a topic, if you want to hear about something in particular, you can email me at paulafiscalshow@gmail.com. I also have a Twitter account, which is Paula Fiscal TV. So once again, do join us, and we want you to stay informed. That is our motto. And thank you, Carol Ruth, for joining us, and we look forward to the next topic.